and this morning we're joined by Mr. Evarada John Abednego, who is a technical advisor to the governor of Bayelsa State on communication and strategy. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. Yeah. I'm sure you have been following with very keen interest this conversation around the Ogoni 9 and, well, also the Ogoni 4 as well. And because generally, I know that whatever it is that happens in River State, Bayelsa also pays keen attention to it. So what exactly have been the thinking of the people of Bayelsa in that regard?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. I think I was carefully listening to all the conversation while I was in the other room for coming here into the studio. I think the speaker largely told the story about how we feel as a people. I am a Bayelsan, and incidentally, during the Ogoni crisis properly, I was a police officer. And I think I saw the level of orders and brazen use of power by the military and, of course, police authorities to suppress the agitations of the Ogoni people. What the Ogoni people are going through is, of course, a problem that every Niger Delta is passing through today. If you get to Bayelsa State, if you go to Delta State, issues of oil pollution, environmental degradation, they are all left there unattended to. And so when you hear last speaker talking about life being meaningless, brutish, and of course nasty, of course that's the situation, because we wake up one morning and flood has ravaged the land. The following day, the flood is gone, and we now see that there is an explosive arrangement somewhere where, you know, pipeline vandalization, etc. Over the years it used to be like that, and then the oil will be leaking and the gas, even as we're speaking, is being polluted. The whole environment is taken over by, you know, only God knows what we can describe in terms of social judgment. So what we are having as a people in Niger Delta is that the Ogoni situation is quite symbolic because it represents our dreams, our pains, and how hopeless the situation has been. Yes, it's true. It's good to lend a little credence to what Mr. President has done in terms of, you know, cleaning up and doing some remediation. That just is a scratch on the back. It doesn't address the fundamental issues of development, because if you go to Bayelsa State today, there is nothing that makes you feel that Bayelsa State is part of this country, because we don't see anything that represents federal presence. And yet, it is said, even within the books of this country, statistically, that Bayelsa State produces over 40% of the wealth of this country in terms of crude production. Then why the abandonment? And in the midst of this abandonment, there is so much danger that the people are swimming with as if it's an ocean.
Well, this certainly cannot be the narrative that the governor will want to sell to the people of the state. So I want to imagine that in the middle of all of this despondency, the fact that people are still not happy with the situation of their lands, that government of the day certainly has a responsibility. There must be a manifesto upon which the governor of Bayelsa State campaigned and, you know, hoped, well, his mandate was renewed. Some people have said, oh, the Supreme Court gave him the first mandate, but he certainly got his mandate renewed by the people of Bayelsa. So what exactly did he sell to them, or what exactly is he selling to them in this instance to make sure that however it is they feel, you know, from the federal government, that same feeling is not the same internally amongst themselves? Yeah,
if someone goes to Bayelsa State and you look at how things have turned around over the past years that Doride has been the governor, you tend to forget that the federal government has actually abandoned the people of the Niger Delta, and particularly Bayelsa State. Because when Governor Diri came in to become a governor in 2019, the situation in Bayelsa State was largely gory because there was insecurity in virtually all fronts, and most pundits painted Bayelsa State as one of the most dangerous and, of course, the unsafest state in the country. And when he went out for campaigns, the people told him that the major thing that they want the governor to fix first is security. Number two is to build critical infrastructure so that the forgotten people of the state can be connected to the rest part of the world. It is true, like I just said, that so much of the wealth of this country is produced by Bayelsa State. But there are places in Bayelsa, and indeed local governments in Bayelsa, that have never seen a kilometer of road before in the entire existence of this country.
Yeah, but isn't that because of the nature of the place?
No, it's not about terrain. I understand that in Lagos, the longest bridge, sometime maybe in West Africa, is in Lagos. It was not built on land, it's on top of water. Where did they get the money to do that? Part of that bridge was constructed by the wealth of the Niger Delta, and particularly in Bayelsa State, but that's not the narrative for today. In Bayelsa State today, because of the massive and critical strategic investment the government has been able to do in terms of security, Bayelsa State is today adjudged by bookmakers across board, from military intelligence, DSS, police, and even members of the media. They've all said very clearly that Bayelsa State today is the safest state in the country, because living in Bayelsa State makes you feel you're living in an environment where human beings should live. Security agents, police officers, soldiers, they all attest to the fact that if there is a place they need to serve in the course of their years of service, it's Bayelsa State. The reason being that the people have come in to show ownership and responsibility, that lives really matter, and not just their lives, the lives of their neighbor, the life of the policeman, of the security man, and critical assets of government must be protected. The reason being that the governor has come to tell the people, look, if we do not have peace, then we can't have water. If we don't have peace, we cannot have road. The bridges can't be built. We cannot thrive in terms of education, because we are talking about a situation where the world is moving on to another level, a level of education determining virtually everything. Now, how do we get all of that done? First, let's do it in security. And that is why if you go to Bayelsa State, I will tell you, don't go and commit a crime in Bayelsa State because you don't have any route to escape. Yes, you may be able to commit a crime at some level, but they can't get away. And what we've gone beyond the level of just acting reactively. We have gone beyond that level to a proactive arrangement where we say, we envisage what force can do, because you are being watched by your neighbor. You can imagine that. That is what is done in most civilized crimes like the UK, where your neighbor is watching you, might not understand. And so when you commit a crime, the police knocks on the door. They'll tell you, what are you doing? In Bayelsa State, both aerially, that is area coverage of Bayelsa State by drones. Bayelsa State is the only state in this country that went out of the shores of this country to liaise and collaborate with international organizations and countries to acquire drones. That is why we must give special commendation to Nigeria police for seeing reason that, look, if we don't get it right in Bayelsa State in terms of peace and security, then there is trouble in this country. Remember, Bayelsa State is the home state of all the jobs. Yeah. And so we've been able to get it right in security. And I can tell you for free that the other phases of development are having due attention in Bayelsa State.
You just told us that you're a former police officer, so I imagine that you must have been following up very closely on the issue of security in Bayelsa. Yes. But then there are also questions around the quality of life. There are those who have been talking around about this, not just security now, but let's even take a look at electricity supply. Only recently, Bayelsa State was in the news for wanting to, for creating its own electricity regulatory commission, so to speak. I know that a number of states are taking that initiative, but then people are wondering to oversee what electricity company precisely? Is it the one that is giving us epileptic power supply, or which one are we exactly looking at? What are your thoughts in that regard?
Regrettably, a few months ago, and I think sometimes last year and early this year, Bayelsa State was in total darkness, or simply put, abject darkness for a period of 4 to 5 months. Not even a blink of the national grid was made available. And the governor met with critical stakeholders of the state, and he did tell them very clearly.
4 to 5 months?
Yes, zero.
That's a long time.
Zero, because the state
depends. It had to take up to 4 to 5 months before the governor intervened?
No, not before. Whereas that was ongoing, the governor had to sit with critical stakeholders who worked out a model to see that we do something necessary to revamp the situation. And we are giving special kudos and thanks to Mr. President for letting state governors to also to take up responsibility in terms of, handling matters of energy generation, removing it from the exclusive list and making state to legislate on that. In Bayelsa State, during that course, we reached an agreement with the people. And what has happened today, as we're speaking, is that the Bayelsa State government went out of this country and discussed with critical power generating organizations and agencies. And he came back here with the company. And as I'm talking to you now, Bayelsa State is going to be the first state in this country that is going to have 24/7 uninterrupted power supply by December. This is a global platform. I'm saying it in very clear terms. Bayelsa State is going to be the first state in this country that is going to have 24/7 uninterrupted power generation in Nigeria.
You mean the whole state?
The whole state, because not the state capital.
There are already areas that have...
just yesterday, remember Bayelsa State is a small state in terms of, demography and all of that, though we know much of the states geographically is waterlogged, but notwithstanding, we understand we have just 8 local government areas in Bayelsa State. The 2 turbines, the twin 60 megawatts turbine were brought in yesterday. The company engineers have been on ground preparing the platforms that will house it. And these twin turbines are just plug and go. They arrived yesterday. So coincidentally, I have been on platform to let the world understand that Bayelsans at home and in diaspora, the promise of the governor has not just been kept. Because come December, we're saying December because it's not going to be December properly. Before December, and let's just agree, because the governor said December, before the ending of December, Bayelsa State is going to use an uninterrupted power generation. Well, and this is fantastic. The reason we are going for that is not just to have light. Remember, in Bayelsa State, the government has been pushing, for the building of a new middle class, young entrepreneurs. We will build capacity in our young folks because we're trying to diversify the idea of let's go and get paper education or certificate education to that of going for innovations, technical education. And most of our young folks have been trained in different trades and technical innovations. What we need life for, power for, is to power these ideas, this critical thinking, so that young folks can get, money on the table, be employers of labor, and drive a new IGR for the state in Bayelsa State. That is the dream of the governor. And of course, we can say yesterday there was jubilation in the whole of Yenego, and I can tell you for free that even the adjoining communities of the state capital, whoever hears the story today as we're talking, you will continue to celebrate because a wonderful thing is happening in Bayelsa State.
Well, I imagine that, Bayelsans will be returning home. Bayelsans in diaspora will be returning home to see if that is really the situation. But you heard Mr. Evarida, I wasn't the one who said it, but we certainly will be holding you to it. We also understand this issue of, because you have said that, it seems that there has been a general abandonment by the federal government, but in the same breath, you also recognize certain things that have been done to liberate states, so to speak, especially in the area of, you just mentioned electricity, and then local government autonomy, because only recently the governor was commended, was it by Niger now, because he was able to pay the backlog of benefits to those who had been owed for years. So what exactly is happening in that regard? If you can quickly do it in like a minute or so.
Yeah, I think over the period, every state in this country, we hear workers at the local government level, the third year of government, crying that so much gross abandonment of everything local government. And we understand local government is supposed to be the vehicle that will deliver services to the nooks and crannies of our communities. Unfortunately, it has been a far cry from the reality. In Bayelsa State, what we've been able to do is to drive a process of reform to ensure that, local government stands tall to deliver services to the people. Remember, the mantra of the government of the Niger is bringing prosperity to the people. So you cannot talk about prosperity at the state level only, at the state structure. You must narrow it, water it down to the local levels. And so what we've been able to do is to look at it critically, create platforms for discussions and engagements, and we came out outstandingly through collaboration that, one, we have to ensure that we build capacity among the staffers of local government. We also ensure that the 23 RDAs, that Rural Development Centers created by Chief DSP Alamesi, former governor of the state, they are empowered, funded by the funds of the state, not local government, and to ensure that not even a penny of the local government's allocation that comes is tampered by the state government. Remember, we have just 8 local governments, and these 8 local governments, with what comes from the federation account, cannot even pay salaries. So what happens in Bayelsa State, contrary to what happens in other states, is that the state government creates subventions, provides backups, financial backups, to enable local government in this substructure to pay their salaries and, of course, carry out activities. So when you go to local governments in Bayelsa and you see, different active health centers, community health centers, playgrounds, and a whole lot of innovations. The money is not coming from the federation account in terms of what goes to local government. It's what the state government is using to augment. Whereas we are doing that, there has been a backlog of unpaid, salaries, talk of pension and gratuities, death benefits, etc., up to 22 billion when the governor came in. And we have worked towards that until last week. The remaining, the balance of 12 billion was paid. And Niger, the National Union of Local Government Employees and Medical and Health Workers, couldn't hold back. They said they will go and see things for themselves. They went, they all conveyed, the entire leadership, including state chapter chairman. They went to Bayelsa State, and what they said, no, we're going to confer the governor with the honor of the champion of local government reforms. The governor, while speaking to that effect, he said this: things that are ordinarily should be taken for granted are now being celebrated. That these are ordinarily, part of his statutory responsibilities as a governor. However, because he's creating a positive change, he has used the moment to call for a national dialogue. That the problem in Bayelsa State is not just about local government reforms, but how can we talk at the national level to talk about creation of local government, funding of local government, the independent, which is the autonomy we are talking about, in alignment with what the Supreme Court has said.
We will wait to see how Bayelsa leads by example in that particular regard, but we have to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Mr. Evarida Abednego is the technical advisor to the governor of Bayelsa State on communication and strategy. I'm sure you've seen how difficult it's been to stop him. But we certainly will hold you to your promise of 24/7 electricity in Bayelsa by December. Thank you so much for coming on the program, and thank you to our viewers too for watching. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.